Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about how to stay organized. I do know that a lot of my writing and author friends do struggle sometimes with staying organized. And honestly, being a creative person in general, organization can kind of seem contradictory to the chaos that is creativity. However, I do want to reassure y'all that putting some organization in your life will not reduce your sparkle. I am living proof of that. I am an extremely organized person. My life is also chaos, and I am super creative. Come along with me on this journey, y'all. I promise it's going to help. First, one of the awesome tools that I use in order to help me stay organized with all of the different projects I have going on is this really awesome free app called Habitica. And just as a little side note, I'm not being sponsored or, any or endorsed or any of that by any of the things that I mention here unless I specify otherwise. These are just the things that I personally use in order to help me stay more organized. I know there are other apps out there that do a lot of the same things, so if y'all find an app that y'all like better, absolutely go ahead and use that. This is just the app that I personally use. Part of why I really like it is it has a gamification aspect to it where you gain points as you complete tasks. So you create your task list on Habitica. It has 3 different sections, one which is habit forming list, which is really awesome. I've used that to really help me with getting better at things in my daily life. So stuff that doesn't directly have anything to do with me as a writer or as an artist, but stuff like eat a food, floss, things like that. It's really, really great for building habits like that. And the habit to do list has a positive or negative aspect to it where you can also put on there habits that you want to break. So for me, one of my big OCD tics that I have is I have a problem with hand washing. So I do have on my habits list that I have to take a negative point, so I get points taken away from me every time that I wash my hands when I don't need to, when I'm just doing it because I'm satisfying my OCD tics. So it's really awesome on there for if you're trying to get out of a bad habit as well, to kind of keep you mindful of that. So it's more of a not I check this off the list and it's done. It's things that you're probably going to do multiple times a day or something that's optional and won't count against you if you don't check it off the list. And that's the other thing, is that it keeps you honest in that at the end of the day, it'll ask you all of the things on your daily to-do list. And at the end of the day, anything that you didn't check off gets put in as negative points, so points that count against you. Now, I know what y'all might be thinking. Why would I want to have points count against me? Again, it's that idea of keeping yourself honest and being like, okay, I didn't do these things today, so I need to make sure that I do them tomorrow. And the daily task list, which there's 3 different sections, so habit, and then there's the daily checklist. Those are the things that you want to do every day or every week or whatever, and in the options you can set that where it's like, okay, every day I have to do this task, or you can put once a week I always do this task, and you can even select which day of the week, or if it's multiple days a week but it's not every day. It gives you all those kind of options, and it's really, really awesome. So that to-do list is for things that repeat, so something that you check off the list for the day, but it's something that's going to repeat the next day or maybe the next week or whatever. So I use that list for all of my daily tasks. So things like I have to answer emails, I have to do these posts on social media, and also for like my weekly tasks, like I have to do laundry, I have to clean, vacuum, stuff like that. So it's really great for that. And then the final to-do list is what I like to call my master to-do list. So this is what you actually think of when you think of a to-do list, where you check it off the list and it's off the list forever. So these are all your one-time things that you're checking off the list. And that's where I keep all of my projects and all of my one-off tasks that I have to do. So, such as when I have a new writing project that I have to do from Azucale Games, when I have a new book project that I'm working on, even something as simple as I have to make a doctor's appointment. And it'll let you put a due date where you can be like, okay, I know that the deadline for it is this day. And it'll say it on there and it'll let you know, hey, you're 3 days away from this deadline that you need to do this task and whatever. And I love that. It really helps with accountability and you can organize it so you can move tasks up and down. And I love that so that I can prioritize tasks physically. Because as I've mentioned in some of my previous videos, I have ADHD and I struggle with the ability to prioritize tasks. Personally, I actually have no ability to understand which tasks are more important than others. In my brain, all tasks seem equally important. However, logical me, who has been trained by society to be like, this task is more important than that task. So, such as buying a new toothbrush is not as pressing as making a doctor's appointment. I mean, in certain situations, maybe that could be a more pressing task, but you get what I'm saying. It's society has told us there are certain tasks that are more pressing than others, as well as something that has a due date that's tomorrow is more pressing than something that has a due date a month from now. So being able to physically look at my list and physically move things up and down so that I can prioritize things and also change the priority of those things just in case maybe, hey, this task has become more important than this one or whatever. I can do that and I can visually see it, and that really helps me to stay organized and to better know what task I need to do next. Because as I've talked about in my previous videos, I always have way too many tasks and projects going on, and being able to slow down and be like, okay, we can't worry about 30 tasks all at once. No one has space for that. However, I can look at this list of 30 tasks and I can decide, okay, which one do we need to do next? Which one is the most important? And my to-do list helps me do that. So having the Habitica app on my phone really helps me with prioritizing as well as keeping track of all of my projects and tasks. And on top of it, there's a really fun gamification element where you collect points and you can turn those points into little things for you have a little character. It's like a little RPG style sort of thing. And you can defeat monsters with the points that you get. It's a very simplistic sort of RPG thing. It's really cute, but it does add that fun layer of giving you extra rewards for completing tasks. So it's really fun and really awesome for that. In addition to using my app on my phone, is I have a running list in my Google Docs. So I have a Google Doc that I visit every day, and oftentimes I update it multiple times a day. And I have all of my to-do list tasks on there as well. However, as on my Habitica app, as I've said, I have my master to-do list on there. So that means I have literally all of the tasks and all of the projects that exist ever. So everything that I ever have to accomplish, like, y'all, I have literally 60 book projects on there. It's terrifying to look at. But on my Google Doc, I don't have all 60 book projects on there because my brain can't handle looking at that every day. Nor should I look at that every day. So I have my priority tasks on my Google Docs. So when I look on that, I see the tasks that, okay, we really need to finish these things this week. Those are the tasks that I look at in my Google Doc. And I delete them and I add to them as needed. So this is an extra layer in keeping track of my to-do list, as well as giving me a more zoomed in view of my priorities for the day, so that I don't feel so overwhelmed looking at my master to-do list on my app. As well as another layer of accountability on there that I have is, as I go through my day, I will move the to-do list items to I accomplished this today. So each day I have a separate area where I put these are all the things that I accomplished for today. And a big part of that is because I also struggle with that I have, from my ADHD, I have no object permanence. So once I do a task, it's no longer in my head. I don't really remember that I did that task. And by the end of the day, I oftentimes have this guilt of feeling like, did I do enough today? And a big part of why I have that feeling is that I have no object permanence, in that I don't remember most of the tasks that I did throughout the day. So when I start to feel that way, I go look at the Google Doc and look at, okay, what did I actually accomplish today? And that helps me to feel a lot better about what I actually accomplished that day, as well as when the end of the day is nearing, I can also look at it and go, okay, is there another task that I can reasonably complete today? Or should I just call it a day and be like, yeah, be done? It helps with that as well, so that I don't just snowball and suddenly I'm looking at the clock and it's 3 a.m. We're all guilty of doing that, and having this Google Doc also helps me to slow down, see what I've actually accomplished, and make sure that I stay within the parameters of a normal people's schedule and do things like eat a food and go to bed and sleep for 8 hours and all that jazz. So it helps me to be more realistic with what I can and should accomplish in a day, as well as so that I don't listen to that interior guilt of, did I do enough today? The next item that helps me to stay organized with all of my tasks and projects is I use whiteboards. So I currently own 3 different whiteboards, and each one is for something different, and all of them help me to stay on task and to stay organized. So my first whiteboard is a calendar whiteboard. So it has all the days for the month, and this helps me to keep track of all of the things that I have scheduled throughout the day, the week, and the month. And this is especially helpful because a lot of how I decide for the day what projects and tasks I'm going to work on is knowing, okay, what scheduled items do I have to make sure that I do today? Back in the day, I read this really awesome article about the rocks, pebbles, and sand concept of creating a to-do list for the day. And the idea is that technically putting in the rocks, the pebbles, and the sands into a bucket, that you can put them in any order that you like, but that doesn't mean they're all necessarily going to fit in the bucket. So for instance, if you put the sand in first, and then you put in the pebbles, and then you put in the big rocks, it's going to overflow and everything is not going to fit. However, if you put your big rocks into the bucket first, and then you put in the pebbles all fill in all the empty spaces left by the big rocks. And then you pour in your sand on top of that, and then that fills in all the empty spaces of the big rocks and the pebbles, and oh my goodness, everything fits in the bucket. The idea of this is your big rocks are, for me anyway, my scheduled items. For you, they might be big tasks you have to do, or big projects you have to do, or it's basically any sort of thing in your day that's considered a big item, whether it's something that's going to take up a lot of time, or it's something that's going to take up a lot of effort, or both. Those are your big rock items, and you need to make sure that you know how they're going to fit into your schedule first. Then comes the pebbles. For me, those are all my tasks that I have to do for the day. So all the tasks and projects that I want to do, I have to then fit those in around my big rocks, aka my scheduled items. Because the scheduled items aren't supposed to move unless I have a rescheduling sort of thing that I have to do. But if I have a meeting at 3 o'clock, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock. And that's the concept of the big rock items for me, is that if I have a meeting at 3 o'clock, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock. I have to make sure that that goes in my priority list first, and then work my projects and tasks around that meeting at 3 o'clock, which means stopping whatever task I'm doing within a certain amount of time before the 3 o'clock meeting so that I can prepare and make sure that I am on time and ready to go for the meeting, as well as knowing that I have to back end in some time after the meeting because sometimes meetings run over. It's the nature of how things work, as well as decompressing and switching gears and looking at my to-do list again and being like, okay, what was I just working on? Or I finished that task, what do I have to do next? All that sort of stuff. So bookending the big rock with time buffers to make sure I have enough time for changing of gears, being prepared, all that jazz. And knowing, okay, what are the pebbles that I can put around this big rock that are going to make sense? And then last but not least is the sand. All of the little things that fill in all of the little cracks. So for me, those are all of the little things throughout the day. So that's like, okay, I need to eat breakfast today. Breakfast doesn't really need to happen at a certain time o'clock, and it's really not a big task that I have to worry about. It's I just go in the pantry and pull out a box of cereal and go to the fridge and pull out a thing of milk and ta-da, cereal. It's really low effort. It's a 5 to 10 minute activity that I do. So it's as long as I do that between this time o'clock and that time o'clock in the morning, we've had breakfast at a reasonable hour and whatever. So it's, I just kind of fit that in whenever it makes sense. So maybe I start off the day with some pebbles and then I fill in the sand of, okay, I'm gonna have breakfast, and then we have maybe one more pebble, and then we have that big rock meeting that we have to do. So figuring out how to fill in all that stuff, having my whiteboard calendar really, really helps with that so that I can keep track of all of my big rocks. Okay, what meetings do I have today? Am I going to go visit somebody today? Changing locations is a huge big rock for me to deal with, because that's not just preparing for a big task that I have to do. Now it's I have to physically go somewhere, so I have to bookend in the travel time, getting there and getting back, how much time I'm going to be spending at this other location. Maybe there's multiple locations involved, all of that. Even errands for me are considered big rocks because it's changing location, it's extra effort, it's all of that. So having to schedule in your pebbles around your big rocks like that, having a visual calendar for me really helps. And while I do also use the calendar app on my phone, I have that going more so that I can at a glance, if I am away from my house and I don't have access to my calendar whiteboard, I can look at my phone real quick and be able to tell someone on the fly whether or not I have a day that's free. Is really what I use that for. But it's overwhelming for me to use my calendar app on my phone because of the way the information is presented. The iPhone calendar app, literally when you click on the actual calendar itself, it just lists everything and just infinite scroll through everything. And for my brain, there's no separation of when one day ends and when another day begins. Whereas when I'm looking at my physical whiteboard calendar, I can see this square is Tuesday whatever, this square is Wednesday whatever, and I can physically see on this day I have these things and on this day I have these things. And that's just visually really hard for me to discern on my calendar app on my phone, which is why I don't use it as much. But if it works for you, that's awesome. Absolutely use whatever is best for you. As I've said, the things that I am mentioning here are things that work best for me. There are a lot of other solutions out there as well, such as a lot of people like physical pen and paper calendars, planner style sort of things. Those are really great too. The main reason why I don't use those is that I just prefer the whiteboard method. I like being able to quickly erase things and write things in again, because a lot of stuff changes rapidly with my schedule, and that would be a lot of crossing stuff out, erasing stuff, and I just prefer the whiteboard method. It's not better, it's not simpler or whatever, it's just my preferred method. The second whiteboard I have is my project whiteboard. So whatever is my priority book project at the time, I have on it, okay, this is the book, this is how many words I currently have written, this is my goal for the minimum of how many words I want to write, which is typically 80,000. And then I have chapters. So I've written this many chapters, and then this is the goal for how many chapters minimum I want this book to have. And then so on and so forth with how many rounds of editing have I done, blah, blah, blah. So I have all of that on there. And having that physically in front of me helps me to also better see in a snapshot how my current work in progress is going, so that I can see all at once how much I've accomplished and how much I still need to accomplish with that work in progress. Because especially with writing and editing a book, it's such a big project that it's easy when you're in the weeds and working on it to lose sight of what exactly you've accomplished and how far along you are with actually finishing that book, with finishing those processes. So having that whiteboard really gives me that snapshot of knowing where exactly I am on that path to actually making that book into a book. I highly recommend having some sort of similar method for your current work in progress, because a lot of times I see writers and authors will get really overwhelmed and be like, I feel like I've been working on this book forever. I feel like I wrote so many words today and it's still not enough. And just not having any sort of tangible evidence as to how much work has actually gone into the book and where exactly they are in the process, as well as how much more they still have left to do. So I highly recommend creating some sort of physical footprint with tracking where you are with your book project. It'll make it seem a lot less overwhelming and be able to reward you with that, I did this much today, or I did this much this week. It really, really helps with that. My last whiteboard is, I call it my everything whiteboard. And it really kind of has everything on it. And a lot of people have looked at it and said that they think it's very overwhelming. But for me, because again, I have ADHD and my life is chaos all over the place if left to my own devices. And what this whiteboard does is it kind of gives me a snapshot of anything and everything all of the time, basically. I have a section carved out that's, again, all of my book projects that I'm working on. And then I have a section carved out for my monthly budget, so like finances and stuff like that. I have another section that's for, okay, I have these upcoming conventions or events or time o'clock things that I have to be aware of, all that. So it's literally my everything board. I have everything on it that I have told myself, this is important. You need to pay attention to this. You need to be aware of this information. And again, it's on a whiteboard so that it's easy for me to change it, because again, these things change quickly. Prioritizing different projects, changing my monthly budget, figuring out which events are coming up, adding new events, rescheduling events, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like my big snapshot board of, all right, what is going on in the world of me that I need to care about? And having that really, really helps. A lot of other people prefer to have all this stuff in separate places and not look at all of it in the same place. And I understand how that can be overwhelming. But for me personally, I need at least one place where I can see literally all of the things, so that if I only look at one thing the whole day, if I at least look at my everything board, I at least have an idea of what is going on, and I can go from there as needed. The last thing that helps me to stay organized, and we're going to talk about this a lot more in another video, is I use this social media posting program called Hootsuite. There are a lot of other programs out there that offer basically the same stuff: Sprinkler, Meltwater, Sprout. Any of them works fine. I just personally have experience using Hootsuite from one of the corporate companies that I've worked for in the past, so it's kind of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of things. Why bother learning a new program if I already know how to use this one? So that's why I chose it. I don't really have a reason beyond that. Some of the other platforms might be better for this, that, or the other, but it's what I use. And it helps me to stay organized in that it literally organizes all of my posts for the month. And that's what I do at the beginning of every month, is I schedule out all of the big social media posts that I need to make sure they happen. So posts about my book, advertising my books, any sort of release announcements that I have, any sort of announcements about events that I'm doing, all that good stuff. So making sure that I can schedule out, hey, I have this important event and I don't want to forget posting about it, I make sure that I do that in advance. As well as I do that throughout the month. When new things come up, I schedule them out. And having all of that taken off my plate so that I don't have to think about what am I going to post on social media today, it's already taken care of, is a huge weight off of my to-do list and my inability to prioritize what's important. So having that to organize my digital social media life for me is a godsend, y'all. It has helped me be so much more organized about posting, as well as it helps me to separate posting so I don't have a wave of all of a sudden I've posted 10 things all within 5 minutes. Instead, I'm able to space things out because of scheduling so that y'all don't get hit with a wave of here's all this stuff and then 5 hours of silence. It really helps with spacing out all of that and just making my social media presence far more organized, and also make it make more sense so that I'm not all of a sudden rapid fire posting because I forgot to schedule out a particular marketing campaign, or oh oops, I forgot to post about this thing or whatever. It's all scheduled out and I don't have to worry about it, and forgetting to post things is a rarity for me now because of this, and it's really awesome. I highly recommend, if you are growing your social media presence, getting some sort of social media scheduling organization tool is really, really super helpful. Last but not least, one of the last items that I have that helps me to stay organized with all of the crazy thoughts that go through my brain throughout the day is I use the Notes app on my phone, as well as I use the Notes program on my computer in order to just record anything and everything all of the time. And that really literally means anything and everything. So it can be anything from me coming up with, hey, it would be a really great idea for a video for this YouTube channel, or hey, it would be a really great next game idea for me to pitch to Azucale Games, or even just random thoughts that I have that I'm just like, oh, I really like this idea. I don't really know what to do with it yet. Maybe I'll include it in a story. Maybe it'll be an article. I don't know. It's also the place where I put all of my random thoughts. And I keep track of these notes in my phone and on my computer just by saving them as different files titled different things. And I have hundreds of them, y'all. It's a little bit terrifying as an outsider looking in on all of my notes, but they make sense to me, and that's all that really matters. As well as once every few months I'll do a cleanup and I'll delete ones that are old that I don't need anymore, or ones that I've already figured out what I'm doing with the thing and all that. So I do go in there and clean them up once in a while, but it's really kind of like a catch-all. And this is the equivalent of scribbling something down on a scrap of paper, scribbling something on a whiteboard, writing something in a journal, just all that kind of stuff. It's just the catch-all for I had a thought is really where I keep all that stuff. And just having a physical place where you can put all of those I had a thought is really, really helpful, because let's be honest, y'all, even if you don't have something like ADHD, if you're a neurotypical person, you can't remember all of the things all of the time. It's just impossible for, honestly, the majority of humans to do. I mean, if you're some sort of like superpower person, those people that can like memorize an entire town and then draw it all out for you, I mean, wow, you're literally a superhero. But for us mere mortals, we can't remember everything all of the time. So get it out of your brain and onto a piece of paper or onto a screen, wherever you need to put it, so that you can then access that thought later and then actually do something with it. So don't trust yourself to remember a thing. Make sure you have something else remember the thing for you. That's really going to help with your organization, as well as not losing track of things that you were like, oh wait, what was I thinking about? What was that idea? All that kind of stuff. Just don't trust yourself to remember things, because you probably won't. So y'all, I hope y'all found this video helpful. I want to thank y'all so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank y'all so much. Take care. Bye-bye.